a leadership class. This is Mr. Hall. How are you guys today? A couple of things before we get into the Chapter 5 lecture. First of all, I want to congratulate you guys on completing successfully the first exam. Most of you guys did really well on the exam, and I'm really pleased with the effort and the work that you put into it. Please note the commentary that I do with your grade, just to give you some feedback. So if you're one of the students that didn't do quite as well as they'd hoped, make sure you're looking at my comments. That might be helpful for you for the next exam. If you didn't do terribly well in the first exam, don't lose heart. There's 2 more exams and a paper yet to do. Since I brought up the paper, I want to add again, make sure that you look at the video regarding the paper that we're doing for this course and just some of the parameters. Again, it is not a research paper, although there's some research involved. You're not going to spend the whole time talking about the background of your selected leader, but much more focused on applying and evaluating and applying the leadership style of the leader that you've selected for your paper. Remember, again, very important, the leader that you select is a business leader, not a political or social leader. We don't want papers related to those. I really want to keep it more to the business realm. So there are leaders that are involved in political or social areas, but they also have a business side. So I want you to make sure that if you even select one of those, that you are sticking to the business element of their leadership. So make sure you're staying focused on that. Let's talk a little bit about Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is an interesting chapter because we're talking about change and innovation. And it's ironic that most of us, say if we're asked by someone, do we like change or do we like to innovate? Most of us would say yes. And I think some of that is very cultural because our culture and our economy really responds well and likes to lift up people who are change agents or people who are innovative. But if we really looked at our pattern of lifestyle and the type of people that we are, you'll find that probably you're not as open to change as you may think you are. We do embrace routine. All of us have certain routines that we do every day. Say when we get up in the morning, we have a certain routine. When we were traveling to campus, I would always say in this particular chapter that we typically park in the same spots or in the same area. I got in such a habit of parking at our Wilmington campus that even though I didn't have a designated spot with my name on it, I had a certain spot that I liked to park my car in. And when somebody would beat me to it, I would actually get a little flustered by that, saying, how dare those people park in my parking spot? Even though it really wasn't my parking spot. It was just the routine of it. And there's nothing wrong with routine because, routine, gives us a certain rhythm in our lives, a certain thing of not in chaos. And so when you're leading change in an organization, you are going to get acceptance, but you're also going to get resistance, and that's really what this chapter talks about. This is my modified PowerPoint. So again, things in red are things that I added, and you have access to that in the course page when you go to each week's module. I'll have a link to modified PowerPoints for the chapters in which I've modified. This one particularly I have as well. So as you can see on your screen, the types of change in teams and organizations, there are different things that change within an organization. Sometimes it's the role or attitude, so the changing of work roles or changing of your position or the values and attitudes of people will change. Obviously, in this day and age, technology changes quite a bit. Our strategy, what our goals are in an organization may change. The economies or people, so we could be downsizing or restructuring, changing our compensation packages or changing our incentives. And then developmental, transitional, or transformational change, the scale of change can evolve. So some of it can be very small changes, some can be very big and strategic changes in an organization. The bigger the change, the more resistance that we tend to get. But again, we don't typically embrace change very often. Oftentimes we're very suspicious of change, thinking that change ultimately may hurt us, when in long term it may actually help us. Just like the changes that we've experienced at the college with COVID and being more online, some students have adapted very, very well to that, and some students have, not adapted quite as well. And some students literally have dropped out of school simply because they were not willing to try to learn change. And that's a dangerous thing in business. I think we all need to be, used to and accustomed to being open to change, because things are constantly changing. There's a process the book talks about in regards to changing. And so there are different stages of that process that the book talks about. So we call it unfreezing, and then changing, and then freezing again. So, one of the things we have to do is, people are kind of frozen in a routine. And so what we have to do as business leaders is to incorporate things that would unfreeze them from their routine, get them used to the idea, and then push them through to the change. But then there's a refreezing of that. So the new normal is what we kind of like to hear now in popular language. Things like, this is our new normal. So this is a refreezing or a resetting of what our normal is. The stages in reaction to change can include, first of all, denial. Oh, that can't be true. They're not going to do that. Then to find out that the change actually is going to happen. So people get very angry about it. So there's a lot of resistance and anger because they're afraid. Really, that anger comes from fear. The next stage, as you can see on your screen, is mourning. A mourning means we kind of miss the good old days. We hear this a lot with older people. We'll say, well, we wish we could go back in time. Unfortunately, they tend to forget about how bad back in time was as well. So they have some challenges back in time. The good old days weren't always good. And then eventually, if they stick with it and we coach them through it as leaders, we can get them to what we call the adaptation stage, or the ability to adapt to it. Prior experience and reactions to change, it really depends on the individual's confidence in coping with the change. So how confident are they at making those changes can be affected by prior experiences. So some people, have had bad experiences with changes, and so they're very suspicious of changes that are being implemented. So how individuals handle stress, how dramatic the change is, can negatively affect reactions to change as well. So we have to look at individuals and how they respond to change, and a lot of that prior experience can really play quite a bit into that change, or that resistance to change. The reasons for accepting or rejecting change can be quite varied as well. So as you can see on your screen, the proposed change, if it's not really necessary, so changing things for no apparent reason is not usually going to be accepted very well. Or the proposed change is not feasible, like, okay, we want to implement this change, but we know because we're frontline workers that this isn't going to work. The proposed change is not cost effective, so making the change may be costly. And so employees will look at that and say, well, they're not going to implement that because it's going to cost them more money to do that. They just aren't aware of that at this point. The proposed change would cause personal losses. So if someone looks at the change and said, this is going to harm me, they're going to jump out of the organization, and they're just going to, cut ties with that organization. Or maybe the proposed change is inconsistent with a person's values. Our values drive us, what we believe is right and wrong, what we believe is ethical and moral. Sometimes companies and organizations will put in something that a lot of employees may perceive as being unethical or deceptive. And so people will leave on a moral or ethical platform. If the leaders aren't trusted, they've had a history of being untrustworthy, certainly there's resistance to that. Sometimes organizations tend to be very cynical about changes, so people really resist it, and people won't adopt change simply because their colleagues are also cynical about the leadership. And then there are alternative reasons for resistance as well. So there are other reasons as well. This is certainly not a complete list of why people resist change, but I think it probably hits home with a lot of people, maybe your own experiences as well. So what do we need to do to implement change as a leader? So the first step is determining what we need to change. So leaders, you guys as leaders need to be very clear concerning what the problem really is and the objectives of change. You know, the more people know about the process of why you're implementing change, the more they're quick to adopt it. Number two, understanding the system's dynamics. So you need to, as a leader, understand the dynamics of the organization and how they will affect those dynamics. A lot of times when we're teaching this kind of chapter, we like to talk about the pebble in the pond. You know, you throw the pebble in the pond, when it hits the water, the rings start to come out. So we have to know as leaders that there are dynamics within our institution and organizations that will affect our change. And when we put in a change, it's going to affect other systems that we're doing as well. And you as a leader need to be very aware of that. The responsibility for implementing major change, leaders need to identify who are the ones that are responsible for these changes and you know, who is in charge of helping to make these changes. And then of course the pace and the sequence of change. You know, some feel that change would happen fast to avoid resistance, so we do it quickly. Sometimes we need to do things slowly in a sequence. So the leaders need to be the ones to kind of determine, you know, how those changes are going to happen and at what pace. The book talks a little bit more about the guidelines for implementing change. I'm just going to quickly touch upon those. I'm running out of my 15-minute allotment for this video. But, you know, again, creating a sense of urgency about the need for change. So people need to hear that we need to make change, you know, communicate that clear vision, identify supporters and opponents and work with them. So, you know, don't just write off people who initially resist change, but try to get them on board. If you can convince them of the change, the necessity of the change as a leader, they actually oftentimes can be the best supporters, are the ones who initially will resist that change. Build that support in a coalition. Use task forces to guide implementation. So in other words, get your employees and followers to be involved with implementing that change. There's going to be a lot better buy-in. Fill key positions with good change or competent change agents, people that you know are going to get the job done and do it in a good way. And empower these competent people to help plan and implement that change. The more we get those kinds of people that are more trustworthy, the better people will adopt those changes. Make dramatic and symbolic changes that affect the work. Prepare people for change. Again, explaining how it's going to affect them. Again, communication is such a big key to implementing change within your organization. Give, you know, opportunities to build confidence, monitor the progress, keep people informed, be optimistic. This is a good thing. I think is very, very important from a leadership standpoint. And finally, in this lecture, just covering this slide, there are several more slides that you can look at that I encourage you to read on your own, but I'm really just covering the change part of this chapter. So how visions influence change. You know, desirable characteristics for a vision. How well do leaders communicate the reasons for the change? It can be challenging but realistic. Do they appeal to their values? You know, a leader is the one who's got to be the communicator. So if you tend to be a little bit more of a quiet person, by the way, communicating and being positive and communicating and leading people is something that you also learn. So these are techniques that you need to learn. So what are elements of the vision that will help implement changes? A value statement. What are the key values and themes that are going to remind people this is what we stand for? We can do that with good statements and communicate values through slogans. Our strategic objectives. Remember to remind followers about big pictures. What are the big pictures? And project objectives, those short-term goals that support the big picture. You know, so keep people focused on the big picture, but also encourage the followers to understand that the project objectives that they're working on, the short-term things, all lead to the big picture as well. So I hope this was helpful for you in learning how to implement change. Again, look at some more of the slides and the rest of the chapter, and we will see you soon on the next installment, which will be chapter 6. Thank you guys. Have a great day.